to record again. So now we're going to focus on creating an NX part. So from Team Center, I'm going to go back to Summer Interns. I'm going to leave that here. We're going to work from this area as well. Notice that I have something highlighted now, and with that viewer tab turned on, I needed to go back to summary. When viewers turned on, everything seems to get slow because whatever you click on, it wants to show it in that viewer tab. So let's just leave the viewer tab turned off right now. We'll just stick with the summary tab. You'll notice that you usually have something highlighted over here and it will show up in blue with that highlight. You're going to want to unhighlight something before you launch the NX tool. To do that, we hold down the control key on our keyboard and just click on that one item, and now nothing is selected. So again, to recap that, hold down control and just click that item, and now nothing is selected. And we do that because we want to launch this icon up here. That's the NX icon. Remember what it looked like over in the Citrix environment? There was an icon that looked just like that for running NX. And I told you you don't need that icon because it's in Team Center. Well, there it is. It's right there. We're going to click on that icon, and that's going to launch the NX tool with it connected to Team Center. And that's the important thing. If you run NX by itself from Citrix, you'll be running what we call a standalone version of NX. It will not be connected to the Team Center database. You won't have access to any of the common parts, and your data will not be stored inside of Team Center. So you don't want to use standalone NX. You want to use the one in Team Center. So the only trick for that is make sure nothing is highlighted and click the icon to launch NX, and then wait for about 20 seconds. That's not part of NX, that's my 3D spaceball. And this is going to be your NX environment that's going to open up. Again, it's running on the server. All the work that you're doing is going to be server-based and not local on your local laptop. All right, so from here, we're going to create a new part. Now, I already created one in Team Center. If you remember, if I click on the Team Center tab here, this brings me back to my home area. And for my home area, I can go down to Summer Interns. And there's the part that I created, a test sample part. I can open that up. And eventually I get down to the CAD model. And remember, we just set up the metadata. So this is one way to do it. I can double click on that, and it's going to launch the part. But it doesn't know if the part is millimeters, metric, or English units. So you have the choice here of choosing between inches and millimeters. I'll work in millimeters. Most of the work that we do at Fermilab is done in millimeters, so you might just get used to a habit of doing that. We're creating a model in millimeters. Everything else is grayed out because we already filled in the information in Team Center. So there's not much else for you to do here except for to say OK. And this is going to launch this part. This is an annoyance, that message that comes up, and it's giving me a license error. This is good that this happened. This is this is good to show you what's going on at the laboratory right now. It's telling me that the license number of users is already reached. Okay, so I can't use this NX license because all of them have been consumed already. So if that happens, you're going to use a different license tool. Right? I'm going to first of all close all my parts. Close all my parts. I'm not going to save anything. No, just close them. Oops, I hit the wrong thing. File, close all parts. They are all closed. Okay, so I'm going to go down to File, Utilities, and select License Bundles. So I'll just hold it there for a second and talk to you about it. We have multiple levels of NXCAD software, from a very basic thing called a Mach 1 bundle that has basic functionality in it. Then we have a Mach 2 bundle that has a little bit more functionality. Finally, the Mach 3 bundle has a lot of capabilities, quite a few different modules that are available to the engineers and designers, and we have fewer licenses of those. Then we have the tools for doing finite element analysis, which is our SC packages. That stands for SimCenter. And in order for you to do your work, you're going to have to tell which bundle you're using. So this is good that we're talking about it now anyways, because if you're going to do finite element analysis, you need to know this, how to switch your bundle. So again, from File, Utilities, Select Bundles comes this form. And you'll notice that this NX 11 and 12, this is Mach bundle number 1 and bundle Mach 2. Both of those are fully used right now. It tried to open up my part using one of these license bundles, and it would not open, which tells me that every one of these Mach 1 and Mach 2 licenses are currently being used. So I'm going to select those and remove those. You can only have 2 at a time here. The Mach 3 is the NX 13100. So just remember 1, 2, and 3 are the Mach 1, 2, and 3 bundles. I can add that over here and say okay. And I'm going to try to open my part again with the Mach 3 bundle. We're going to still say millimeters. I'm going to say okay. And this time it let me get in. So that tells me that the Mach 3 bundle is available. So I was able to use that bundle to get in to do my part. Now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to save that part.
So just I remember that Chris was telling me they were going to use 12,500 and 13,500 for these projects.
Right, for doing the analysis work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I'm going to come down here and just do close all parts again. And I'm not going to save it again. So we'll come in and do this again. File, utilities, select bundles. So the Mach 3 license got me in. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. So Carol was just saying that the 135 and the 125 are the ones that will allow you to do finite element analysis, right? If these are consumed as well, then you can try Mach 1, 2, or 3. Those will all give you a chance. What we're saying is if you're really having a hard time getting a license, that means the rest of the lab is also having a hard time getting a license. And we have to, sorry for you guys, but we have to have a priority go to our current employees. They need to use these licenses. So we really were hoping that more towards the end of the day, you would be logging into some of the software. So if you're doing your work and someone asks you to get out, please understand that it's because they need those licenses. They're not going to stop you from using them during the day unless we run out of licenses for the whole laboratory. Then the administrator is going to look at the list of names on the list of users, and they'll probably be emailing you asking you to get out while other people use the software. But until that happens, go ahead and use the license and use it during the day, and we'll see if we start having problems. Right?
Yeah, the evenings are starting about 3:30. The evenings there tend to be the
Yeah.
license start freeing up.
Yeah, we have a lot of designers who start about 6 o'clock in the morning. So typically by 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, they're logging off. And that typically means the licenses start opening up again by the end of the afternoon. But if you're doing finite element analysis, these are the two license bundles that you absolutely have to use. And by the way, these two licenses also do all the CAD modeling and drafting as well. So these are multi-purpose licenses that do it all. So these are the two I would recommend that you select. Sadly, every time you use Citrix and you start up NX again, you have to go back to File, Utilities, Select Bundles, because they will revert back to Mach Bundle 1 and Mach Bundle 2. So you'll have to do that on a daily basis when you're using Citrix. If you use your own laptop locally at Fermilab, they get stuck once and they stay that way. But when you're on Citrix, they keep on reverting back. So once you set them once, the next time you log in, you're going to have to set them again. Sorry to say that. Okay, I'm going to go back to this part now. I'm going to click that part. It's still millimeters. I'm going to open that part. And now we're using the FEA Mach bundles for these, but it's going to be just the same. I'm going to do a very, very quick sketch here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the sketcher and how you can learn to be a good modeler. If you have never done modeling before, welcome to 3D modeling. It's something that they even teach in high school these days in CAD classes. But typically in college, you'll get probably 1, maybe 2 semesters of a CAD modeling class. I think most colleges only offer 1 semester, and it's usually pretty simple parts that you make there. Here at Fermilab, our parts are not very complicated. Most of you know what a pop bottle looks like, you know, that plastic molded shape bottle. That is a very complex part to model. If you actually had to make a CAD model of a plastic bottle with all those little bumps and ridges on it, that's pretty complex. We don't do anything that's that complicated at Fermilab. We make simple parts that are usually machined at a factory that are simple, like 3D axis machine milled parts. They could be sheet metal parts. They can be really simple things. We don't build ergonomic parts. We don't build castings. We don't do deep drawn parts very often. We do simple things, but we build very, very complex assemblies. So your parts are typically simple. Your assemblies are usually large and complex. So for modeling, what you're going to be asked to do here at Fermilab is typically pretty straightforward components, and then nuts and bolts, washers, flanges, pipes, things like that, build up your assemblies. So I'm going to show you just a real quick start of a part. That's sketching first. And sketching is the primary function for doing all of your CAD modeling. We sketch on a surface. That surface comes around, and then we have some sketching tools. The YouTube videos that are available for you will show you how to do all the sketching, but there's ways for you to come around and to do some simple sketching. So we'll make a simple little part here using some of the basic functionality that's in the tool. Here, maybe I'll come around this way, and we'll come in on an angle. Yeah, I'll make it intentionally a little bit off now here, and then back to there. All right, so I made a sketch that's kind of messed up on purpose. And what you'll notice from this shape is that you can actually grab these things and start to move them around. You'll see some of these things start to move with them. I can grab that point, for example, and move it. This is sort of like the rubber band mode where I can move these things around to where I want them. Or I can use constraints. And the constraints are this little icon up here that bring up a set of tools that allow me to do things like, for example, parallel. Well, that's the wrong one. I want parallel, which is this one. Right? Parallel. I can say that I want this curve to be parallel to this curve, and it will automatically adjust that curve and set this other one up higher. So things are moving around on me a little bit. I could say perpendicular and say that these two are perpendicular to each other. Right? Close that out. I can come in here and maybe move this point, or maybe move this point over a little bit. Do some different things. And I'll notice that some of these things are connected to each other. Like that little marker right there, that's a marker that says it's in line with this line down here. So when this line moves, okay, that did not do it. Something over here is connected to that. There it is. So something here is connected to that. Not sure exactly what it is that's connected to that line, but it could be this marker here. That horizontal, yeah, it could be that one. It is. Okay, so this little marker over here is connected to that point. If you don't want that, you can select that marker and delete it. And now when you move this around, it moves independently of that other part. Anyways, this is the basic sketch. To make these numbers into real numbers, you can double click on it and you can type in a value. For example, if I want that number to be 100, I can change the value of that to make it 100. And the other numbers are just reference numbers until you convert them by either typing in a number or right-clicking and saying convert it to a driving number. Eventually, you'll have all your, excuse me again, eventually you're going to have everything defined. For example, more constraints like tangencies. I can say that this curve is tangent to that curve. And it'll make them now tangent to each other. You can come in and add things like fillet. So if I come in here and draw a line across here, it's going to put a fillet in between those two. And you keep on massaging your sketch until you actually get it, what you want it to be. So if I can pull this down a little bit, something is keeping that from happening. But you keep on playing with that shape until you get it to be what you want, and then you finish the sketch. All the dimensions go away, and from here, then you can extrude, and you can pick the curves in lots of different ways. There's pull downs here that allow you to pick single curves, connected curves. So if I pick a connected curve, it goes all the way around. I'll cancel that. I can do region boundaries. So if I just select something inside of here, I'm going to go back to my sketch by double clicking on it. And I'm going to add in another circle over here. I'll do something like that. And we'll finish that sketch just so I can make a point here. If I say extrude again and say region boundary, you can see that now it only picks the region that's within the curves, and it's going to extrude only that portion as opposed to everything else. Okay, so I can try picking these different portions and get it all, or just little parts of it. Likewise, I can say extrude and pick connected curves, and I can tell it to pick intersection or follow fillets. So now as I pick a curve, it will go all the way around until it gets to an intersection point. And then it says, do you want to go this way? Do you want to go this way or this way? So you have to select which way you want to go on that to make your solid. There are little handles on here that allow you to grow this geometry in two different directions. You always have these little values here that you can type in values to as well. If I click on this arrow, I can type in a value here, let's say 50 millimeters. Okay. You can do the same thing over here. You can say with the start and the end point, and you have all kinds of little pull downs here too. right? So you can reverse the directions. There's a lot of things you can do. There's also adding in draft angles and offsets. So we could come in here and add in a two-sided offset, and now I have the part looking like a shelved part instead. So there's a lot of different things that you can do within these forms. That's what you'll be learning this summer, is learning the functionality of the CAD model tool. Again, it's like Inventor or SolidWorks. So if you've used anything like that before, it's going to be very similar. You just have to learn kind of where the new buttons are. Now, to help with that, there is a find a command. So if I come up here and I don't know where fillets are, I can just type in the word fillet, and it's going to find things in NX that it thinks you thought you were typing. Like here's fillet. It shows you on the left side where it is with the pull down menus, but you can work your way down through here and you'll see all the different things that it found that it thought were fillets, including something that's called a blend. So somewhere in here is going to be, there it is, an edge blend. So that might be what other software calls a fillet, but in this software they call it an edge blend. So if you didn't know what that was, by searching on fillet, you might find out what it's called here in NX. So I strongly encourage you to use the find command up here and click the search, and it will find those commands for you. Okay, so speaking of that, you'll notice that here is the tree. We did an extrude here. To get back into that extrude, you just double click on it. It brings you back to the form. To get back into the sketch, you click on the sketch, and it brings you back to the sketch. So it's pretty easy to navigate around back and forth to your part. You can double click on it on the screen as well, and that brings you back to the same form and then back to the sketch. So there's lots of ways to navigate around on this part. You're going to find that there's probably 2 or 3 ways to do the exact same thing, depending on how you are used to working on yours. Let's add something else like that edge blend that we talked about before. I'll put a blend here and we'll bring this blend out a little bit further, and I'll say okay to that. So I just added an edge blend. You'll notice that the tree over here is showing the history of the model. There was the extrude, there was the blend, and so on. As you continue to add features here, you'll build up your entire part. I mentioned that Fermilab's parts are usually very simplistic. So if you're building a component, you're probably not going to have more than about 8 steps to your part. Our parts are pretty straightforward. You might have a dozen or 2 dozen steps at the most, but you're not going to be working like, for example, the automotive industry. To build a cylinder head for a car, for just an engine, that cylinder head might have over 5,000 steps just into the modeling of that cylinder head. They can be very, very complex components. But here at Fermilab, if you're starting to get more than a dozen steps to your part, you're probably doing too many steps. There's probably a simpler way to do that part, and you're going to find that most of the components you build while you're here at the lab are going to be very simple parts. Now from here, we build assemblies, and so there's an assembly navigator here, and there's a part navigator. The assembly navigator is where you can add components. So you'll be going into the assembly pull down, and you can add or create new components to add to this assembly, right? And that's how you'll be building up your parts. Now this is a part that we're working on now. So if I wanted an assembly, I could come up here and say create new parent. So let's go ahead and do that so you can see what this looks like in Team Center. Right, I'm going to go ahead and save this part. It says it failed to save. I think it's because it's not checked out. So let me right click on it and check out my part. All right, now I'm going to do a save on that part. That must have been the warning message I got earlier as well. Okay, so this part's been saved now. I'm going to go back into Team Center and we're going to take a look at that part. So here's our test part. There's a little snapshot of that part. This is a file called the JT file. This is a lightweight representation. Let's go to that viewer tab and see if it shows up. Remember, I had a problem with my viewer here a little bit ago, and it still looks like I have that problem. Yeah, my viewer for some reason is just not working today. It says it's trying to do it. It says working, working, working. Let's see if it opens up the part this time. Boy, it sure is trying. It's trying, but it never opened that part. I'm going to do a window reset perspective. And we're going to give that a try again. The viewer tab, we'll go to the summer interns. And I'm going to click on that JT file again to see if it will open it up. Give it one more try. Definitely something wrong with my session here that's not showing that part. Again, you don't need to use Team Center to look at the part. I just wanted to show you that it typically does show up in this viewer, and it is not going to do it again. All right, that's a problem I got to solve. All right, but you can see your part over here. Okay, so again, back in Team Center, let's go back to Summer Interns, double click. We have the one part right now. I'm gonna build another part now. So you don't have to build these parts in Team Center. You can build them directly here in NX as well, but they end up in Team Center. So we're gonna go into the Create New Parent. And now it's gonna walk me through the creation of that part. So my part is gonna be an assembly. Is it in millimeters or inches? I'm gonna use millimeters. And then I'm going to come down here and double click to assign a part number. And here is the name. Double click on that. And you have to put in names here again. So I'm going to call this one test assembly, comma, summer intern. Okay. So I'm going to give it a name. And then I'm going to go ahead and just copy that using Control C on my keyboard. And what we need to do is go into this attribute field. Remember in Team Center, we typed in lots of attributes before we ever created the part. And here are those same attributes. There's the name that we just gave it. Here's the description. The description is not the part number. So I'm going to double click and paste in the description. The CAD group is here. Remember we did that in Team Center too. We picked which division we were working in. I'm in PPD, so I'll use that. And the category, remember we picked between those nouns. Is it a wheel, a winch, a wire? In this case, it's an assembly. So I'm going to scroll down through this list until I find the word assembly and pick that. If you're doing a weldment, then use the word weldment, but in this case, it's an assembly. And then it's not drawn by anybody. I'm just gonna leave that blank. There's a couple more things in here that you just leave blank. So in general, we always make sure that we have a name, a description, the CAD group, and the category. Of course, it has a number and a revision that's automatically assigned to it, but it's your job to make sure it has a name, a description, the CAD group, and the category, okay? Make sure you remember that. I don't want you guys making parts all summer that have a name that's a number, because if you don't do anything here, you'll have the ID be the number, you'll have the name be the number, you'll have the description be the number, and that's junk data. We don't want junk data in the system. We want you to put in appropriate number, name, description, the group that you're working with, and the category. There's two more things that we need to add, and that's what project does it belong to. So if you remember, Team Center walked us through that process, but if I'm doing it in NX, I have to still add in that project. So I'm going to add in, the common parts for this part. You'd add in whatever project you're working on. And then the folder here is the folder in Team Center that the part's going to show up in. So I'm going to click on that, and we're going to come back up to home. I'll go back down to Summer Intern, double click that, and say OK. So now my part's going to show up in that folder. I'll go ahead and say OK. Update that. And now I have a new assembly with a component inside of it. Right? Now I would continue adding more and more components in here. Let's go ahead and do a save on this now. And it asks you, we have one last chance to change anything if you want to change anything. Not going to. And we're going to pop over here to Team Center now, and we're going to see if you just notice it just popped in. Test assembly Summer Intern. So there's my data. Here's my part, and this EBOM is the electronic bill of material. There's the sample part that we made. Back to summary, at least it shows up there. And here's my my test. So this is the test assembly here, and there's my test part there. All right, so you'll continue to build up parts all summer. You'll be building them up. Feel free to make additional folders where you can store your data, and you'll continue to work in NX on that work. So what I want to point out to you now is just one little tip that we really want you to make sure you're not making this mistake. You notice that I'm at the assembly level, and when I go to the part navigator, there are no modeling steps here. There's no extrudes, there's no fillets, there's no blends, there's nothing happening here at the assembly level. That's the way your assembly should be. Assembly should just be arrangements of components. If I go to the component, if I double click that and make it the working assembly, notice the other assembly is now grayed out. This part is now the working part. Here's where I have my extrude and my blend for this component. The assembly though, when I make it the working assembly, has no history. So assemblies are just collections of parts. They do not have any geometry inside of them. They only have components inside of them. So please, when you're modeling, you do not model, like for example, I'm at the test level. I could come in right now and add in a feature. So I could say menu, insert, design feature, we'll put in a block. Right, and I'll just pick 100 by 100 by 100. There's a block. I just added it to this assembly. Right? If I go down to the part navigator, there's block. That block belongs at the assembly level. That's what it's showing me. I don't want that, right? If you really want to have another component, you need to make another component. So that block does not belong here. We're going to delete it. If you want another part called block, then from the assembly area, under the assembly tabs, you say either add or create new. So we're going to create new. This is going to be a model, and I'm going to walk you through this very quickly again. I'm going to call this one block, and I'll copy that, Control C. We'll go to the attribute page. We'll change the description to say block also. We'll pick the CAD group that I'm working for. The category will be block. So I have to find block in here, B-L-O-C-K, there it is. Say okay. I'll make sure my project is set for this part. Pick this project. That's not the one I don't want you putting your parts in F&AL standard parts. I want you to put yours in the project that you've been assigned. And then the folder is going to be summer interns. So it doesn't take very long to create a new component, now called block. Now what you do is you make the block by double clicking on it. You make it the current part, and then you can say file insert feature. This is really, really simplistic. You typically don't make a block this way, but that's fine. Now you'll notice that the history belongs to block. My test part, when I make it the active one, it has those steps to it. And then when I go to the top level assembly, there is no part history to it, but there are components in it, these two components. And when I go back into Team Center, you'll notice I don't have the block yet, but as soon as I do my save, as soon as I come in here and do a save, it's going to save that block. You'll see it pop in here in a second. Here it is. Okay, so I think I've really, given you a good start here on knowing where to get around. I was hoping we stick to an hour and a half, which we're at that mark now. This shows you a little bit about Team Center, a little bit about NX. I did focus on where to go for your training materials. That's the F&AL standard parts. And in here, you're going to find training materials. I also pointed out that you can go directly to teamcenter.fnal.gov. I strongly encourage you to go into the YouTube and just type in anything on NX, NX modeling, NX sketching. And to that point, I wanted to show you that underneath training, let's see, where do I have it? Underneath orientation processes, let's see if it's there. No, oh, here it is, NX sketching examples. If you really want to have some practice learning how to model, then you'll go to the sketching examples that I have set up for you here. Okay, exercise number 1, let's start with that. I click on exercise number 1, it's just a simple JPEG. My system got very slow here all of a sudden. Okay, if I want to see it larger, I just double click on it, it will open it up in its own window. Here's the sketch. So you can practice doing sketching of these different shapes that I have. Okay, I've got a whole bunch of different shapes in here. This is a great way to get started because most of the work that you're going to be doing is based on being good at sketching. So if we go into sketch number 3, you can see that shape over here. Sketch 4, there's a lot of different simple sketches that are in here. And as you work your way up, they actually get a little bit more complex. They're going to require you to have more and more skills. Exercise 13, a little bit more skills. You don't have to work through all these. There's about, I don't know, I thought there were about 20 of them in here. You'll find under sketching examples, if I double click on that, you'll see that there's a little booklet of sketches here that were right out of an old book from like the 1950s. Yep, we had books back in the 1950s. You'll find that there are different sketches here. If this will behave for me, here we go. Right, there are different sketches that you can go through here. Wait, my computer's really gotten slow. Can somebody give me a feedback that I make sure that I'm hearing from somebody? You guys can still hear me?
Yes, yes, you
Okay.
come in,
Carol.
Thanks,
everything's
Carol.
good.
Yeah, my system was really starting to slow down here. Yeah, this is not moving and advancing very quickly. Anyways, there's a bunch of old sketches in here. These are great ways for you to go in and, yeah, good thing we're running to the end of this because my system's starting to lock up. Anyways, these sketching examples would be a great way for you to get started in CAD modeling in NX. And specifically, if you're not finding anything good in the training materials for NX, right there, if you don't find any good training examples, just do a YouTube search on NX sketching in NX version 11. You'll find lots of professional videos on how to sketch. If you get good at sketching, you'll be good with a lot of CAD software packages because they all use the same type of sketching techniques, and that will help you model up your parts here. Okay, I'm going to do a stop on that recording.